Welcome to Unfiltered Reflections. I'm your host, Passion, and today we journey into the quiet corners of the human mind, where the most profound battles are often fought in silence, unseen. We're going to explore a story about a world not so different from our own, where the lines between what is real and what is imagined became so blurred, so deeply intertwined, that the very act of knowing became a luxury few could afford. Our story begins with Alara, a woman who lived in the city of Viridia, a place of gleaming chrome towers and perpetual twilight, where the sky was always a soft, bruised purple, and the air carried the scent of ozone and something faintly metallic. Alara wasn't a hero, not in the way stories usually tell. She was an archivist, a quiet soul whose days were spent sifting through fragmented data streams, piecing together histories that often contradicted themselves. Viridia was a city built on order, on efficiency. Every citizen had a designated purpose, a neatly defined role. Alara's role was to ensure the continuity of information, to make sure the past remained consistent. But consistency, she was beginning to learn, was a malleable thing. Her first real tremor of unease came not from a grand revelation, but from a small, insignificant discrepancy. She was cataloging records of the Great Founding, a pivotal moment in Viridia's history, when the city rose from the ashes of the old world. The official accounts, etched into the city's central archives and taught in every education module, spoke of a singular, visionary leader, a figure known only as the architect. His image, a stern but benevolent face, was omnipresent. His words, concise and absolute, formed the bedrock of Viridian society. But tucked away in a tertiary data cluster, a forgotten corner of the old network, Alara found something else. A flicker. A fleeting, grainy image of a council, not a single leader. 7 faces, not one. And the words, though similar in sentiment, were spoken by different voices, layered and nuanced, not the singular pronouncements of the architect. It was a tiny thing, easily dismissed as corrupted data, a glitch. Her system flagged it as such, recommending deletion. But something in Alara rebelled. She felt a prickle, like a shard of ice had lodged itself behind her sternum. The official history was a pristine, polished monolith. This was a jagged, unsettling pebble. And once she saw the pebble, she couldn't unsee it. The next incident was even stranger. Viridia had a daily ritual, the Harmony Hour, where communal screens across the city would broadcast soothing imagery, fields of golden wheat, oceans stretching to an endless horizon, children laughing under a bright blue sky. Everyone knew these images were projections, remnants of a world long gone, but they brought comfort. It was the only time the purple twilight of Viridia gave way to the vibrant hues of a forgotten sun. One cycle, during Harmony Hour, Alara was in a rarely used section of the archives, a cavernous space filled with ancient, humming servers. On a small, forgotten display, she saw the usual golden wheat fields. But then, for a fraction of a second, the image flickered. Not to static, but to something else entirely. A field of stark gray ash stretching under a sky the color of stale blood. Then, just as quickly, it snapped back to golden wheat. Alara blinked. Had she imagined it? Her optical sensors, implanted just above her tear ducts, registered no anomaly. The city's ubiquitous surveillance systems, the Omni Eyes, would have recorded it if it were real. Yet the memory persisted, a persistent whisper in her mind. She felt a peculiar sensation, like 2 opposing magnets trying to occupy the same space in her head. The warmth of the golden wheat, the chill of the ash, both were real, yet only one could be true. She tried to rationalize it, a momentary power surge, a residual ghost in the old display. But the feeling of wrongness clung to her, a persistent burr under her skin. It wasn't just a factual error, it was an emotional one. The ash field had felt familiar, like a memory she shouldn't have. This was the nature of living in Viridia. The city provided everything: sustenance, purpose, peace, but it also curated everything. Every sight, every sound, every piece of information was meticulously filtered through the central consensus matrix, a vast network designed to ensure optimal societal function. Dissent was a myth, chaos an ancient tale. But Alara was beginning to suspect that peace came at a cost she couldn't yet articulate. Her colleague, a jovial man named Kale, noticed her growing distraction. Kale was a true believer in Viridia's perfect order. He saw the world through the lens of efficiency and progress. Still wrestling with those old data ghosts, Alara? he'd ask, his voice tinged with amused pity. The past is a messy thing. Best to let the matrix smooth out the wrinkles. Alara would nod, offering a tight smile. How could she explain the feeling? How could she describe the sensation of holding two entirely different truths in her mind, each clamoring for dominance, each feeling equally valid and utterly contradictory? It wasn't confusion, not exactly. It was a kind of mental stretch, a painful expansion of her inner landscape. One evening, after her shift, Alara found herself drawn to the city's periphery, a district known as the Forgotten Edge. It was a place where old infrastructure, deemed inefficient, was left to crumble, a stark contrast to the city's sleek core. Here, the omni-eyes were sparse, their crimson lenses often cracked or dark. The air was heavier, thicker with dust and the faint scent of decay. She found an old, abandoned data processing unit, its shell rusted, its internal mechanisms long since stripped. But something about it called to her. As she ran her hand over its cold, pitted surface, she noticed a faint, almost invisible etching, a symbol she had never seen before. It was a circle, but incomplete, with a jagged line breaking its perfect form, and within the circle, two opposing arrows pushing against each other. She traced the symbol with her finger, a strange sense of recognition washing over her. It was alien, yet familiar. A fragment of a forgotten language, perhaps. Or a warning. That night, Alara couldn't sleep. The purple twilight outside her window seemed to press in on her, heavier than usual. She closed her eyes, and the image of the golden wheat field warred with the ash field, the single architect with the Council of Seven, the smooth official history with the jagged pebble of truth. Her mind felt like a battlefield, two armies locked in an eternal, exhausting struggle. She started seeking out more of these anomalies. Not actively, not overtly, for fear of attracting the attention of the omni-eyes, but subtly. She'd linger a moment longer on a corrupted file, cross-reference data points that the system deemed irrelevant, pay closer attention to the fleeting expressions on people's faces when the Harmony Hour projections flickered just so. What she found was a pattern of subtle inconsistencies, small cracks in the veneer of Viridia's perfect reality. A report on agricultural yields that showed an impossible abundance in a sector known for its barren soil. A historical account of a communal festival that described a sky of vibrant blue, directly contradicting the official records of perpetual purple twilight. Each instance on its own was negligible, but together they formed a mosaic of quiet contradiction. The most disturbing discovery came from an old medical report. It detailed a condition long since eradicated in Viridia, described as cognitive imbalance syndrome. The symptoms were vague: persistent unease, difficulty reconciling information, a feeling of mental friction. The treatment involved neural recalibration, a process that supposedly smoothed out the patient's internal landscape, restoring their equilibrium. But Alara noticed a chilling detail in the archived notes. After treatment, patients often reported a profound sense of peace, but also a diminished capacity for abstract thought, a reduced emotional range, and a quiet, almost robotic acceptance of all official narratives. The jagged pebble was gone, but so was the ability to even perceive it. Alara began to feel a profound loneliness. She moved through the gleaming, ordered city, watching the serene faces of its citizens, and wondered if they felt it too. This internal war, this constant, draining effort to hold conflicting realities in their heads without shattering. Or had they all undergone neural recalibration already? Had their minds been smoothed until only one truth remained? She started to see the city itself as a kind of grand illusion. The pristine surfaces, the efficient systems, the harmonious projections, all designed to create an undeniable sense of well-being, while subtly eroding the capacity to question it. The perpetual purple sky, once a symbol of Viridia's unique beauty, now felt like a shroud, obscuring whatever true sky lay beyond. One day, Alara encountered an old woman in the Forgotten Edge. The woman sat on a crumbling bench, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes a startling, vibrant blue, a color rarely seen in Viridia. A city where most eyes were a muted gray-green, a color deemed optimal by the central consensus matrix. "You see it too, don't you, child?" the old woman rasped, her voice like dry leaves rustling. Alara froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. "See what?" she managed, her voice barely a whisper. The old woman chuckled, a dry, wheezing sound. The cracks, the places where the seams show. They work so hard to keep it all neat, don't they? To make sure everything fits. But some things just resist. She tapped her temple with a gnarled finger, especially in here. Elara sat beside her, a torrent of unspoken questions rushing through her mind. The sky, she began hesitantly. Sometimes I remember it being blue. The old woman's eyes twinkled. Oh, it was blue, child. Blue as these old eyes, and green as the grass beneath your feet before they paved it all over with chrome. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They want us to forget, to think that this is all there ever was, that the purple is natural, the order is destiny. They want to make sure the picture they paint is the only picture. But why? Elara asked, her voice trembling. Why make things so confusing? The old woman sighed, a deep, rattling breath. Because a mind that sees two truths at once, two utterly opposed truths, is a mind that cannot act. It is paralyzed. It questions everything, but can choose nothing. It is too busy fighting itself to fight them. She gestured vaguely towards the gleaming towers of central Viridia. They want quiet, and a quiet mind is one that has stopped asking questions, stopped connecting the dots that don't fit their pretty pattern. This was it. The core of her unease finally articulated. The old woman hadn't given her answers, not definitive ones, but she had given her a framework, a way to understand the relentless struggle within her own head. It wasn't her that was broken. It was the reality she was being fed. Elara returned to her archives with a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just cataloging data anymore. She was searching for the hidden threads, the inconsistencies that were not mere glitches, but deliberate interventions. She started to notice how certain historical figures were subtly recontextualized, their words re-edited to fit new narratives. How scientific discoveries that hinted at a more chaotic, unpredictable universe were slowly phased out of the public record. She even began to experiment. During Harmony Hour, instead of letting her mind drift with the golden wheat, she would consciously try to conjure the ash field she had seen. The effort was immense, a mental tug-of-war that left her exhausted. But each time, the image of the ash field grew stronger, more vivid, more real. It was like exercising a muscle she hadn't known she possessed. The city, with its constant hum and pervasive order, started to feel less like a haven and more like a carefully constructed stage. The citizens, moving with their serene, purposeful strides, seemed like actors performing a well-rehearsed play. And Elara, for the first time, felt like she was watching from backstage, seeing the ropes and pulleys, the shifting scenery. She found herself sketching the symbol from the abandoned data unit, the incomplete circle, the two opposing arrows. It became her secret emblem, a reminder of the internal conflict she was navigating. She realized that the greatest power of the architects of Viridia wasn't outright censorship, but something far more insidious, the ability to make you doubt your own perceptions, to make you believe that the internal conflict was a flaw within you, rather than a symptom of a manipulated external world. One night, Elara found herself standing on the highest accessible platform of the Forgotten Edge, looking out over the glowing heart of Viridia. The perpetual purple twilight seemed to pulse with a silent energy. She closed her eyes, and for a moment, she saw not the city, but the raw, unadulterated chaos of the old world, a sun that blazed, skies that shifted from blue to gray to fiery orange, landscapes that were wild and untamed, not neatly manicured. And then the ash fields, vast and silent, a testament to something lost. She opened her eyes. The purple glow of Viridia was still there, unwavering. But now it felt different. It no longer felt like the only truth. She knew, deep in her bones, that another reality existed, even if she couldn't touch it, couldn't prove it to anyone else. And that knowledge, that persistent, unyielding spark of memory and contradiction, was her greatest weapon. She had to find others who felt it too, others who carried the burden of two opposing truths, others whose minds had not been smoothed, whose internal landscapes still held the jagged pebbles of inconsistency. Because in a world designed for absolute conformity, the greatest rebellion was not to fight, but simply to know, to hold on to the unsettling truth of what was versus what was said to be. Elara took a deep breath, the metallic scent of the city filling her lungs. The silent war within her, the constant push and pull, had not ceased. But now, she understood its purpose. It was not a flaw. it was a compass, a painful, exhausting, but ultimately liberating navigation tool through a world designed to keep her lost. And she knew, with a certainty that resonated through her very bones, that this persistent, often agonizing state of holding two conflicting beliefs or ideas simultaneously, particularly when one's existing belief is challenged by new information, which results in a feeling of uncomfortable mental tension, was the very essence of cognitive dissonance induction. If you've enjoyed this episode, please visit our website at deszicakes.com. Thanks for joining me on Unfiltered Reflection. Until next time, be kind to yourself, keep exploring, and remember, you are worthy, you are seen, and you are loved.